Hey everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we watch every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, the show is hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing okay. I got my shots yesterday. Went to the Walgreens.
Rabies.
Scabies.
Fila.
So I went to get my flu shot and my my COVID booster.
Mm-hmm.
Normally they ask you, like, you want them both in one arm, which arm, whatever. This nurse takes out the syringes and she puts one on each shoulder at the same time. And she says, "Try jerking off now, motherfucker. Dr. Fauci sends his regards."
Uh-huh. And you said, "Thank you. I'm free, finally."
And no, it didn't happen. She was nice. Yeah, I tried to make conversation and it went poorly. I said, "Do you ever see Contagion?" And she said, "Oh," which is not an answer. Anyway.
Oh, you're one of those. That's what you meant. Like, so I have to do this again.
I was going to ask her if she would prefer if the vaccine was they have like a little nasal vaccine in the movie Contagion.
Those are also in real life. You might be pleased to learn.
A study of the transnasal vaccine is they're working on that. Let's bring our guest in for this really good part of the podcast. Our guest today, very pleased to have manager, producer, Hollywood big-wig, as well as a wonderful social media drummer. Jarrod Murray is on the show. Welcome, Jarrod.
Hey, Jarrod, how you doing?
Good, thanks for having me.
Is that fair to say you're big-wig?
I'm a wig. I mean, I'm like mid-wig.
First wig on the show.
Mid-wig, yeah, first wig on the show. Careful, Ian's gonna. Is it good to say that Ian's gonna snatch it? Which is the worst thing that I could say about Ian?
Yeah, that sounds like I think you're complimenting me that you don't want to do that. You've never wanted to do that.
Ian can't snatch wigs then. Uh-huh. Ian's bad is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Are you a Walgreens man or a CVS man? What's your pharmacy of choice?
I'm a CVS guy.
A CVS guy. Consumer Value Service or something. I think that's what it is. Ian, do you have like a chain pharmacy down there in Oaxaca?
Oh, we got pharmacy chains. We got Farmacias Guadalajara.
That's a good one.
We got See Me. That's the biggest one. Where their motto is something like the same but cheaper, which inspires confidence. But
that's good.
I'm there a lot of the time. They have a big famous doctor dancing outside of the pharmacy.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what is
they
this?
have like a mascot, pharmacy mascot.
He's like dressed up like a guy in a costume, like Mr. Met.
Yep, exactly like that. Yeah.
We need more of that here in the States.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, we need more advertising about drugs. These pharmacies are stepping up.
Speaking of microchips, which of course they're in the vaccine.
Yep.
I don't know if either of you know about this. There was at the late great Fry's Electronics store, they had a mascot in a costume. Let me see if I can figure out what his name is.
For those unfamiliar, Fry's West Coast, I think, only electronics store. Each store has its own unique theming. And they put a lot of money into the theming.
Yeah, if you've seen the film Nope.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's the place where the guy from the OA works, and it's got a, what do you call it, flying saucer crash into it. Charlie Chip is the name of the Fry's mascot, and this is a computer chip mascot costume, but the costume itself would wear costumes based on the theme of the store. So here I've got Charlie Chip as a prospector. It's some kind of a Western theme.
That was my local Fry's, was Western, Palo Alto Fry's.
Palo Alto. Shout out to the Palo Alto Fry's. You ever go to the one over in Campbell, California, Ian?
No, didn't make it that far.
I forgot what the theme was over there. I think it would have been Auschwitz. Anyway, Jarrod, you a Fry's guy? You ever go to Fry's?
I've never been in a Fry's.
Deeply sad.
Is this part of your big wig status?
When I lived in Burbank, I remember I drove past it a lot, but I just never.
Yeah.
I was not making any money at the time, so I couldn't afford to go in a Fry's.
Fry's was a wonderful place because they would have sort of Radio Shack style. They would have stuff for sale there that I didn't really realize you could sell. Like they just have like a box of like little connectors. Or like stuff that you would use to, I don't know, close off a wire that you weren't going to plug into anything. They had little, like, I guess it's like AliExpress type stuff that you would get now, but just little plastic pieces that I assumed you had to get from like the government or whatever. But you could get them at Fry's, and then they'd sell them next to like They also had a lot of those bootleg colognes. Great store.
Incredible candy aisle usually on the way to checkout
as well. Yeah, rip in peace.
Yep.
The one in Burbank had like a big 50s sci-fi themed, not explicitly alien themed, but it was like, so there was a giant octopus, and then all its tentacles formed the tables where they sold the personal computers.
Wow.
Pretty cool. So you get a compact Presario over there. We got to talk about a movie today. First, I'd like to do something really indulgent, if that's okay with you guys, even more so than usual.
We're on a podcast. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
exercises.
I was recently contacted via DM by a producer for TMZ Live. Do you guys know about this?
Now, what would lead you to believe this is true? This is a real person who contacted you?
They had the golden verification check.
Okay.
They were a real thing. Their account was being followed by like the Hollywood Reporter. And I Googled around TMZ Live scam, and it seemed like it was a real thing.
That's what I would do. Okay.
This is like a live online show that I think some clips of end up on the TMZ on TV show. TV show. And they asked if I wanted to show up via Skype specifically to comment on the celeb news of the day. And I immediately said yes, because I thought this will be funny and weird. They said great. So we got as far as doing a test call. And again, this is via Skype. I assume it's like sponsored because no one else is using Skype.
Yeah.
People stopped using that like New Year's Eve 2007. They were done. And so I download Skype because I don't have it. And we do a test call this morning.
Was there an offer of remuneration, money involved?
Of course not.
No. Okay.
No.
You were volunteering for TMZ. That's
well, as the I think it was the guy from BuzzFeed once said, exposure plus. You know, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
So I write some material based on, they give me a list of topics, and I write a bunch of material, and I think I'm either going to bomb this or become the most popular TMZ Live appearance of all time.
Yeah.
And then they just don't call me. Like they just ghost me. And so...
And what's interesting, I've been watching TMZ Live today, and of course, your attempts to reach out to them did appear on the show as a kind of...
like the Flash poking through the Speed Force, just a little face going, hey, Harvey! We got to bring up the Flash on every episode. So, without further ado, I'd like to present a segment now that I am calling TMZ Dead. So, first story, Drake gives away brown Birkin bag to fan in Miami during Blur tour. I assume his tour is called, I don't think he's on tour with Blur. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So Drake gave away a Birkin bag to, he's been giving away a lot of fancy handbags to ladies in the front row. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if inside the bag was an 11th grade math textbook with the inscription, if you're reading this, it's too late to date me.
Yep.
You know, I'd like to give Drake a bag, a hefty bag. Tell him to climb on in. This guy's trash. Speaking of Birkin, that reminds me of barkin', which is what the neighborhood dogs do when they hear this guy's music. You know, his new albums might be called For All the Dogs. That's just true. That's a fact. But if you ask me, this guy's for all the birds.
Yeah.
And dogs. You know, Drake is a kind of bird, a duck. Wish somebody would duck the volume when his music starts playing. Okay, so then we've got Michael B. Jordan and Steve Harvey show love after Lori Harvey split. Michael B. Jordan was dating Steve Harvey's daughter. They are no longer together, but recently...
Sorry to interrupt. Is this the first segment we might actually get sued for? Were these real options that were presented to you by TMZ?
Yeah, I mean, they're just on TMZ, though. Like, they're already... These have already been published.
Okay, great.
So anyway, Michael B. Jordan and Steve Harvey, said hello to each other in public. You know, look, they aren't family anymore, so there's no need for them to feud. Hey, are these two grown men with enough sense to act polite toward one another while they're in public? A survey says yes.
Okay.
Sounds like Michael and Lori's relationship was a little rocky. Apparently, he wanted to give her a ring, but she wouldn't be put in a box. Now that it's over, glad to see that these guys still have glove for each other. Maybe they can catch a Creed concert together. And it seems to me that the B in Michael B. Jordan stands for being friendly with your ex-girlfriend's dad.
That's a joke I can get behind.
Okay. Next, Britney Spears escapes to private island after knife dancing disaster. Did you hear about this? Now, first of all,
no,
it wasn't a disaster. It sounds like she's had a knife, like an accident.
Yeah.
What happened is she posted a weird video of herself dancing around with some big knives, and people got freaked out. because she has a public history of mental health struggles, which is not funny. And I'm glad she's doing fine. Apparently she, after this, has TMZ might just be speculating. She's gone on vacation. Like, that's nice. Whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, the response to that video must have cut pretty deep, but I'm not surprised she left town for a little slice of paradise. Folks were absolutely butchering her. Hope she can take this time to get a handle on her PR and comes back sharper than ever. I heard she brought her friend Julianne with her so they can play dice together. Hope they didn't run into too much chop on the flight over, and I hope she has a knife vacation.
Can you tell me more about Julianne?
Sorry?
Nope, that's it. That's fine.
Okay, and then last one. Donna Kelsey says Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift dating. NFL laughing all the way to the bank. So the new guy who Taylor Swift's dating, who's on the New York Jets, his mom said that it's real. She was on some kind of podcast, I think, about being a famous person's mom, which is maybe we should do that. Anyway, forget dating a jet. This whole thing is a psyop to distract from Taylor's enormously wasteful habit of flying on her private jet. I'd like to see someone reach out to that jet's mother, the French manufacturer Dassault, which has been churning out military aircraft since the 1930s. Aircraft that have dropped bombs on innocent people across the global south for nearly a century now. And now there's civilian aircraft like Taylor's Dassault Falcon 900 dump carbon emissions into the air so that she can get around the country without ever having to run into a real person. That's what I call a crime against humanity Taylor's version. I'd like to see her lying on the cold, hard ground, deceased. All right, so that's...
Well, I like that you took the last part of the segment out of a nosedive. That was cool.
Was that like another plane joke?
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
I think it's okay if Taylor continues to live on the face of the earth. That's fine with me. I don't have basically any feelings about her or thoughts.
You don't think she should change some of her behavior in regards to emissions?
I do. I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jarrod, what do you think about all this?
I've heard maybe one Taylor Swift song. I hear
which one?
I hear it's oh man, you have to ask me.
Mm-hmm.
The one that was like, the one that was big.
Oh, was it this one?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the one he was thinking of.
You ever been on a private jet? You're a Hollywood bigwig.
I have.
Yeah?
Once,
How many people were on the private jet?
5, maybe.
Okay. What kind of... was it? It was like a jet, not like a little prop plane. You weren't with like Harrison Ford over the golf course or whatever?
Thankfully, no.
Yeah.
But this was like over 15 years ago when my boss flew us to Vegas.
Oh, all right.
As to celebrate our show getting picked up or something. And we got to... It was a 45-minute flight. So it was,
now I have to ask, did you drive back?
No.
Oh, shit.
No, home back.
Okay, well.
Would have been
not a fan.
Incredible.
Uh-huh.
I think we should skip the 2 questions because of the bad thing that I did already on the podcast. And let's take that wonderful segue into today's film. This is $1 Million Baby, directed by Clint Eastwood, released December 15th, 2004. Same weekend as Kevin Spacey's Beyond the Sea, which we've discussed on the podcast on our Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil episode. It's also just a month after the birth of Jack Champion, who, of course, we all know as Spider in Avatar: The Way of Water. And also born that year, 2004. Wait, go ahead. What do you say?
I was going to ask what led you to that piece of information, but I think I already know the answer, which is that you simply already knew it.
No. So the Wikipedia, like the 2004 in film page
includes births.
It also includes births, which is really upsetting, especially when you get into the 2004. Because there's a lot of people who were born in 2004 who are now significant enough to be on that Wikipedia list. Also born that year, Millie Bobby Brown. And now I learned something interesting, which is that her full name is $1 Million Bobby Brown. All right. If you want to watch this movie, we tell people this. You can watch it on all the regular places here in the United States. You got your Apple TVs, your Amazons, your what have you. Ian, what about down there in Oaxaca?
Now it is available streaming for free with a subscription on Max, and it is also available on Google Play and Amazon. Sadly, it's not available on Apple TV.
That's fine. Now,
okay.
Jarrod, the reason that Ian says this is sad is that I used to do a bit where I would say that in Mexico they call Apple TV Manzana TV because of how they say they say Spanish. Okay. Now, then I was doing the bit where I would do AI voices saying months on TV to usually poor results and make the guest guess them. And I decided after the Taylor Swift thing, I shouldn't do anything that is also extremely environmentally disastrous, like asking some server farm somewhere to make Dr. Phil say Montana TV. So, looking for a new dumb thing to do for this part of the episode. If you guys have any ideas, any replacement ideas.
Well, if you can be brave, you could do the impressions yourself, but that would require quite a bit of humiliation on your part and our part, possibly.
I didn't think about that. I did think about that. Like, I'd just be like, let's see. How about we'll start with Richard Pryor. How about that? We'll start with a Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
It is interesting how white guys are pretty comfortable doing Morgan Freeman. What do you think about that? Do you guys have any feelings? I guess he's a very specific man. No one talks like that.
Well, I believe you yourself have pointed out that it's okay to do Obama if you're so accurate that it's undeniable. So I think it's probably the same idea. And he is a crossover cultural figure, right? He appears in a lot of popular with white audience films.
Yeah, I mean, probably more than films targeted particularly at black audiences, at least in the last couple of decades. Jarrod, how do you feel about Morgan Freeman?
Love Morgan Freeman. There's a lot of voiceover in this movie.
Yeah,
that is for sure. Now you better love extremely explanatory voiceover.
Well, so this movie's based on. It's written by Paul Haggis.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Rapid fire 2 question. Either of you ever had haggis?
No.
Okay, good. Me either. Done. So it's written by Paul Haggis from a short story by this guy named FX Tool, who was the pen name of a boxing trainer named Jerry Boyd, who died a couple years before this movie came out. And in 2000, he published a collection of short stories called Rope Burns, Stories from the Corner, which contains a story called $1 Million $$, Baby, which they, for some reason, changed for the film.
Sure.
But
they didn't want to confuse people.
Yeah, exactly. I skimmed it. I didn't read it. I don't have time for that. But a lot of Morgan Freeman's voiceover comes directly from the book, or the story rather. So I guess it's like nice. I don't know. Like the thing where he says she's from the hills outside the scratch-ass Ozark town of Theodosia. So like there's some good turns of phrase here. But yeah, it is pretty explanatory. I don't know. I don't remember what you said about Morgan Freeman from our Unforgiven episode, Ian, because I barely pay attention.
Yeah. One of the main lessons of the pod.
Where are you here? Where are you now?
I like Morgan Freeman. I think he has to be amongst the most misused actors. So I sort of feel sorry for the man, at least as a professional.
What are some of these misuses you're thinking of?
Oh, I think just any of the films basically that people love him in, he is forced to often not really act. I don't know what people are signing him up for, but it's just sort of like, you
thinking like a March of the Penguins?
Well, and I'm also just thinking of like a Shawshank Redemption, another famous voiceover role from him. And I think, again, this is not to say that he is doing badly. I think he is very capable. You know, such greats as Lucky Number 11. Is he in that film? No. I think he's very good. I just think that if people, like I've said before on this podcast, I've accused Clint Eastwood of before, if people are self-conscious or uncertain about their audience feeling the right feeling, which I think is an extremely dangerous instinct to have if you're making a piece of art, then they will just often say, hey, get Morgan Freeman in here and we'll make sure that they know exactly what we want them to be feeling. And then if that happens to be drawn out and happens to be tied in with an unfortunate C story about Jay Baruchel's character, then you better just strap in because there's nothing you can do about it.
Boy,
one movie I thought he was utilized very well in was Gone Baby Gone. Like very different.
He's great in that. Yeah, I was doing my very best on our Mystic River episode not to accidentally talk about Gone Baby Gone because there's some overlap with those. But he's great in that movie, and it allows him to actually be a little bit scary and hard to read.
Yeah,
angry,
morally complex, something that he's rarely permitted.
Let's talk about, what's your relationship to Clint generally, Jarrod, and this movie in particular?
Well, my relationship to Clint, my stepdad was a big Dirty Harry, Pale Rider fan. Yep. We had the VHS recorded from HBO.
Hell yeah.
Back in the day. And that was my first exposure to him. I was much more like a Schwarzenegger, Stallone kind of kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really appreciate Clint until later. And Unforgiven was one that like I saw at an early age, and I knew it was good, but I didn't appreciate how good it was until much later. And this one in particular was because this came out right after I moved to LA, and Mystic River was such a big deal at the time, and I didn't like it. I didn't get it. Like there was something that didn't resonate with me. I thought the performances were a little too big, and
very big.
And this one I saw with my girlfriend at the time, and I was kind of blown away by it at the time. And for the longest time was probably in my top 5 Clint, I would say. And then I did a rewatch this summer. I didn't rewatch $1 Million Baby because I knew it was already up there. So why do I need to watch it?
Yep.
And so when given the opportunity to talk about this, I realized that on rewatching, I was like, oh, I don't know what I was thinking.
So you've changed your position on the film, you would say. Yeah.
I understand. I think this film is primed to be mistaken for a good film, particularly by a younger person, but I think by anybody who sort of recognizes like prestige trappings. I think
absolutely.
I'm going to put this in with Mystic River, where lighting choices and, like you're saying, big acting and all these things that if maybe you don't have a great sense of what makes them good, they just like match 1-to-1 to other films that are good.
I mean, I agree. This movie, it's no surprise that both of them were big Oscar contenders. In this case, a winning Oscar contender. Although, I mean, Mystic River won some Oscars as well, just didn't win Best Picture. But they have a lot of what I associate with kind of Oscar bait, like the term Oscar bait. And I was thinking about the two of them in relationship to each other, and they're the two first films that Clint scores himself. I don't think it's just the score doing it, but I think in both cases, the score has an almost... I mean, I invoke this all the time. Another film starring Jay Baruchel, Tropic Thunder, really just like heightened my radar for bad Oscar movie trope, like trite and kind of... There's a way that his scores for these movies are almost cartoon versions of an Oscar movie score. They're like as you said, Ian, like the voiceover, they tell you exactly how to feel. They're very hand-holding and saccharine and like heavy-handed. And it's to the film's detriment, but I do also wonder, like, if you were to have if somebody were to Sherlock Jr. style, like, write their own score for this movie, would it be demonstrably better? I don't know. It would still have Jay Baruchel in it.
Yeah, I think there's lots of individual elements that you can improve pretty easily. The score among them, just camera choices. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot that you can spare criticism entirely.
Yeah.
Certainly the writing.
The boxing scenes are pretty good.
Yeah, you're right.
This feels very first draft. Like it's right. I was talking to Jake yesterday about Paul Haggis saying that even he wouldn't have shot that first draft.
Right.
Wow, that's meaner than anything I was going to say in the podcast.
This becomes a thing that Clint screenwriters start saying more and more. People are saying this more and more. That the script gets optioned or purchased or whatever acquired by Mel Paso, and they never hear from Clint, and then the movie comes out. And a lot of times they say, like, I think Peter Morgan on Hereafter is like, that wasn't really done. Which sure. I do think is, I mean, it goes with Clint's sort of jazzy one take, or like, let's get the first take type of ethos. He mentions in this interview with Amy Taubin in the publicity run for this movie in Film Comment, he talks about how he wants everything to feel like the first time it's been said, which I think is an admirable way to make a movie. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be from a first draft script either.
I think it pretty much has the opposite effect, because the first draft so often is establishing the text before you figure out how to tell the story in subtext, right? You're just like, okay, I know what this scene is supposed to be doing. Let me put that down. And it's going to come out usually the way that it's most often been said before, I think. It's like, okay, I'm using all the pieces that I'm really familiar with to communicate this. And probably audiences are also extremely familiar with.
Particularly the stuff with the priest, I thought was...
Oh, yeah.
was particularly egregious.
The whole daughter, ex-wife story stuff. Yeah.
The priest. So this guy, the guy who plays the priest, he's an Irish actor.
Real Irishman. Yeah.
Real Irishman.
Like an American
He's got an accent mark over the I. He's Brian with an accent over the I. He's for real Irish from County Cavan. He went to Trinity College. And he got his start in like Martin McDonagh's stage plays. He was in like, I think the original production of Doubt, the John Patrick Shanley play, and it did some Tom Stoppard. He's worked with like Terrence Malick after this, but he's just not. I don't know. He's not given a lot to do here. He calls Clint a fucking pagan. So you're like, oh, is this going to be like one of those kind of priests? And then that never really comes back. He's also like, I don't know. I haven't been to a lot of church, but is this a dynamic that exists? Has there ever been a preacher who wants someone to stop coming to church?
I think in the modern era, people are just desperate for congregation members. You're right. But I think it is, interestingly, particularly like an Irish priest dynamic, at least in fiction, to have like a combative relationship with somebody in your flock. But sometimes, you get like speaking of McDonough films, you get a priest who himself is sometimes the grumpy doubter.
Oh, yeah, of course. And sometimes he has a lot of jokes to make about like, what if a young child was intellectually disabled and black? That'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
This is an anti-In Bruges podcast, at least on my end, Jarrod, for your information. I'm angry at that movie.
Good to know.
I was going to say something really smart and cool. Oh, yeah. In the short story, I think Frankie Dunn is Irish. Like, or at least he's close enough to Irish that he says like fucking. They spell it fucking and that sort of thing. And it's interesting that they make him. This is reminded me, his sort of self-study of Gaelic reminded me a lot of my girlfriend's dad, who was a classics major and still reads classical Greek every day, so he doesn't lose it. I guess at this point, I don't know what he's going to use it for, but he still got it in there. And so I was struck by the parallel there. He has a much better relationship with his children, though.
And also, it also reminded me of, I forget which episode it was, which movie you guys were talking about, but the idea that Clint's characters are these good dads, but if only their children would let them be good dads.
Probably the Absolute Power episode.
Yeah. This is another Clint dad, potentially regretful dad, but really he regrets that his children don't appreciate him properly type of dad.
Maybe gets the Morgan Freeman assist to make sure that they know how good of a dad they're missing out on, actually.
Your dad had the courage to euthanize someone. That's what you're missing out on.
Yeah. It was close to being, for like the first half of the film, I have seen this before, watched it in a high school ethics class at a Catholic high school, in fact. But I didn't remember how that storyline was going to resolve with the daughter. And I thought, you know what? The idea of saying that you can be a dad bad enough to make a mistake that you can't come back from, I thought was going to be uniquely brave for Clint Eastwood, thinking like, oh, wow, sort of saying that it's not always reparable or something. But then, of course, the implication at the end is that it's not his fault, really, that he's the real hero. So we didn't get the kind of dark introspection that I was hoping for. Yeah,
I mean, at this point, it's hard even to pin down what bad thing Clint could be pseudo atoning for in this. Like, obviously,
if there's something that happened in his past where he's passionately against euthanasia or something, add some bit of complexity to or irony to the narrative, which is just, it's all kind of surface.
Yeah, there's a lot of surface to this, and yet you can't see many of them because Tom Stern is they're really turning it. I thought there was something wrong with my Blu-ray, and then I realized, no, it's just he's trying to go as dark as possible. I think he cites John Ford, something John Ford would say, which is like, show me with the setup with all the lights off. Okay, let's shoot it now. Like that kind of look, but with the exception of the boxing scenes, which I think boxing comes with its own lighting scheme that is designed to be visible.
I have my own issues with the training and because I used to box.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Let's get into it. We've all done a bit of combat sports, I think. Yeah. But Jarrod, tell us about your history with boxing.
I picked it up 2016, I think, and I did you guys know Fantastic Fest?
Yeah,
in Austin.
Of course. Yep.
They have the Friday night of the festival. They have the Fantastic Debates.
Mm-hmm.
And so you debate a topic for 2 rounds and then you fight. And so the crowd votes on who wins. And so I started boxing and then trained specifically for that.
Great.
Nice.
And it was my opponent was it was a Zack Snyder debate.
Okay.
Oh,
My opponent was pro Zack Snyder.
Okay.
Mm.
And,
Was it like Elijah Wood or something? I feel like it's always Elijah Wood at those things.
No, it's a guy named Josh Lobo, who's a buddy of mine. And there was a fire alarm going off at the time. And we debated, and then we fought, and I came out of the corner and he just got me right in the nose. I'm like, oh shit, this is happening now.
Yeah, he's going real. Yeah.
And then luckily I think I ultimately won, but I think my cardio was really good because I've been running every day and training.
You had the lungs for
a few
it.
times a week. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And but the idea that this she could barely throw a punch, and then like, well, time to get you on the speed bag.
Right.
It's just,
and she's already had a fight.
Yeah, she's already been on an undercard. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this movie that doesn't really add up when you look at it.
Yeah, why does she need to go to LA to learn how to box? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's same with Danger, but we'll save Danger for a moment from now.
Mm-hmm.
So have you boxed since? Have you done any, like, outside of sort of for fitness, have you done any?
No, it was just the one time, but I was training pretty regularly up until COVID, and then I just haven't really been back. I miss doing it.
Should I come down there?
Yeah, do you want to? Yeah, I'll hold the mitts for you.
The back half of the episode.
I'll show you how to do a jab and a cross, and then we're going to work the speed bag, and that's all.
I know how to do jabs and crosses. I was saying we should beat the fuck out of each other. That's all I'm saying. And then Ian famously has hurt himself very badly.
Yeah, all sorts of injuries. I have been doing some type of striking since college, Muay Thai and boxing mostly, and then took up BJJ recently.
Nice.
I've had broken ribs, bruised ribs, swollen spleen, broken nose.
Famously,
what else? Caved in chest. You're talking about detached.
No, I was thinking about
sternum.
a different injury.
Which one?
Which is didn't you break your? Or did somebody else break detach their calf, split their calf muscle over?
That was me. Okay. You're right. That was a BJJ training thing where we were practicing like stand-up judo style stuff, and I just dropped the guy on my own leg. So yeah, that was entirely on me.
More. That was in Guatemala, right?
The chest thing was in Guatemala.
Okay, because I was saying at the time, buddy, you got to do Guatemalan jiu-jitsu when you're in Guatemala. This guy's got it messed up.
You were saying that to me. That was your main
recommendation. And then I was also saying they probably were beating you up because you came in there, you dropped your pants, and you said which side do you do first? Because you thought it was Brazilian waxing.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of striking, I was texting with Ian the other day saying we need a general strike.
It's true.
And Ian says, I've already got one.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you already have a general strike? He says, yeah, I've had it for years. And I realize this guy can't read. He thought I said a genital stripe. He thought I was saying we need a genital stripe. Guy needs to clean out his eyeballs.
Yeah. You said you had 3 minutes on Brazilians, so we got 2 minutes left. Okay. Yeah.
And then I've my girlfriend and I do kickboxing in the living room for fun and exercise, and to occasionally accidentally hurt either our thumbs or like toes when we kick a thumb, and then we both pretend that we're not really mad at the other person for making a completely honest mistake. Wonderful for the relationship. She's terrifying, by the way, my girlfriend. She could kill probably anyone, despite how she appears.
And generously chooses not to as well.
Yeah, she's so giving. Speaking of dangerous women, the film, I want to talk a little bit about Lucia Riker.
Yeah.
Who is the
Blue Bear.
The Blue Bear. She's inexplicably East German. They keep saying she's East German.
This is, of course, 2003 when the film was being shot.
Well, so here's what I think happened is the character in the story is Russian, which I think is where the bear comes from.
Makes more sense.
But Lucia Riker is Dutch. And they decided, well, she couldn't be Russian because her father's Surinamese. She's, I don't know, maybe they thought she doesn't look Russian enough. But we got to justify the bear by making her from a former Soviet country. So she's explicitly East German. She's old enough to have been, she was born in 1967.
That's true. Could have come up in East Germany.
But she was a real boxer. She's Dutch, as I mentioned. She was 17-0 in her boxing career, and she was a kickboxer before that. She was like 34-0 in her kickboxing career. She somehow like knew Clint, or Clint knew her or knew of her, and I think she first got involved in the project to help train Hilary Swank and to consult. And then he was like, "Why don't she just play the big boxer?" She is formidable. She's got some very big shoulders and arms.
There's a rich history of actual boxers appearing in boxing films, and I think it's great. It's often very effective, not only because they're throwing real punches, but because they're just intimidating to watch do
most
boxing
notably
type stuff.
Mason the Lion Dixon and Rocky Balboa.
Oh yeah.
Rocky Balboa came out around the same time and is quite good. I think that's one of my favorite Rocky sequels.
Agreed.
And we get Michael Bent. He's in this film, and then also Ali. He's fighting as Sonny Liston, I think, in that movie. Maybe
I think that's right. $1 Million Baby apparently comes from is an insult that Sonny Liston threw out at Muhammad Ali. I don't know exactly what it means. It sounds like a compliment. And in boxing, also, of course, the boxing film is basically as old as film itself. Like some of the earliest silent shorts. You get the Leonard Cushing fight. It's when Leonard Nimoy and Peter Cushing fought each other in 1894. Take that again. Leonard Cohen and Peter Cushing would have been funnier.
Okay.
Corbett and Courtney before the kinetograph. These are the sort of the boxing film and the film in general.
I mean, it makes sense. It's emotional. You can have backstory. You can also have about just about 1 minute of action and pack a lot into it. It's pretty inherently cinematic.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, the same things that make boxing cinematic and dramatically compelling compared to other pro sports are also the things that make it like particularly precarious as an actual pursuit, as an actual way to get yourself out of a tough economic situation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, it's one-on-one, so there's like no one else to share the beating with, but also you can film it in a much more relatable, intimate way. And you also, there's like no, like if you could be like a football kicker and probably not get CTE. You could be a pro basketball player and your joints are going to be toast, but your head will probably be okay.
And another thing that kind of about this, that it doesn't capture the complexity of the sport. Like it's not about hitting, it's about not getting hit.
Yeah.
The head movement, all that stuff is just, it's kind of, there's no service paid to that.
Right. Part of that sort of shorthand is that she just knocks everybody out. She's like, this is how I play RPGs, is I just like get really powerful, so I don't ever have to actually like use any kind of tactics. And then I just kill everybody. So it's a movie for like stupid guys like me. Ian, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think, Jarrod, what you're kind of also referencing is that the idea that people haven't considered the consequences of boxing, maybe with very, very young boxers, like amateur guys, 17-year-olds or something, that's the case. But I will say that I've met lots of aspiring pro boxers, pro MMA people. And if you've trained for more than a year or two, you've gotten an injury. And I think like a lot of people with disabilities actually are sort of forced to consider much earlier, or I think some people in their whole lives don't consider this, but the value of your life basically, and deciding, what you are choosing to live for, and understanding that at the end waits your mortality. So it's not a question of like, well, if I don't do this, I'll live forever and my life will be perfect. But sometimes understanding that there is a risk inherent to some activities, and it's a difficult decision, not an obvious one, certainly. I
mean, there is a scientific fact that you only have so many heartbeats in your lifetime, and so you have to preserve them. Do you know about this, Jarrod? Do you know that Trump thinks this?
I've heard a little something on it.
Yeah, okay. He was, I think, a Golden Gloves boxer himself. Is that right? He's freaking golden because of some of the pee stuff. Anyway, wait, hold on. Just hold on 1 second. So, we actually haven't really said what the movie's about. We'll say it quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Clint Eastwood. Ever heard of him? He is Frankie Dunn, who is a boxing trainer, owns a shitty gym called the Hit Pit. I like that.
Hey, you know what? They definitely portray it as a shitty gym. I've been in much shittier gyms than that. They actually look quite nice. They have like new exercise bikes and stuff. So this is Hollywood lies once again.
Hollywood lies. Jarrod, you're one of the purveyors of those over there. He's and he and his former trainee and now sort of assistant and only friend Eddie Scrap Iron Dupree. I don't think we ever hear his actual full name. His
Didn't
name
know.
is
This is
Scrap.
news to me. Yeah.
They run the gym. At the beginning of the movie, Frankie's got a contender named Big Willie Little. That's a good name. Played by Mike Coulter, later of Luke Cage and Plane fame. He's quite good in the film Plane. I believe he is going to be in the upcoming spin-off Ship. That's real.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah. Isn't that
You
good?
texted me about his voice, Jake. I don't think I ever texted you back. You're absolutely correct about that. It's incredible how soothing it is.
Beautiful, mellifluous voice.
He just takes you in his arms vocally somehow, which I'm happy to be there for.
Hey, if he wants to narrate some stuff, let Mike Coulter narrate stuff. Just because he's very handsome and a huge muscle man doesn't mean he can't also just narrate stuff.
True.
Freeman's going to have to pass the torch at some point.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got Mike Coulter. He's good, but Frankie won't give him a title shot. It's clear that Frankie's gun shy about his fighters getting hurt. And then into his life comes Maggie Fitzgerald, played by Hilary Swank, who is an aspiring boxer who wants Frankie to train her, and he refuses various grounds, including that she's a girl and that she's too old. She is in the film playing my age, so that's pretty cool. And eventually takes her on. She gets good. She's got heart. She's got determination. And then she's got a spinal cord injury because in a big fight in Vegas, Lucia Riker, Billy the Blue Bear Osterman, punches her. She's not looking, like on the way back to her corner. And the stool, now I'd never seen this movie, but I knew about the stool thing.
Okay.
And so knowing that, but not having seen the film, they show him putting the stool up so many times.
Yeah.
It is really effective, actually, knowing. And it's interesting because they market the film, they were very careful in the marketing not to reveal that like fully half of it is about, or a third of it is about an injured boxer. So, but I think going into it, knowing that it is still very effective because you're thinking, which one is it going to be? Which one is it going to be? And then, of course, it's actually the guy. What's his name? The guy from
the guy from Cobra.
Yeah, and he's also in he was on True Detective. Marco Rodriguez. He's also in The Rookie. We've talked about him on our Rookie episode. Great face. Don't know if he has any lines in the film, but he puts the stool in. He half puts it in the ring, which is something that I do. I'm very infamous in my home for almost putting something away in a way that is infuriating.
And now you've seen the potential consequences of this.
So she hits the stool. She has a C1 and C2 complete spinal cord injury. So she is unable to use any part of her body from the neck down. And she hangs out with Frankie in the hospital for a little while and then asks him to kill her, asks him to assist her with suicide. He refuses at first. She bites through her tongue to try to bleed to death. And so he eventually injects her with a super overdose of adrenaline, which is what a number of our listeners have told us that's what it feels like listening to the show. And then she dies, he leaves, and goes and has some lemon preserve pie or whatever. So that's the film. Spoiler alert for the last couple of minutes.
So start from the top. I will say the Big Willie stuff, that was effective storytelling for me. What did you guys feel about that? I want to pick out some highlights, some positives.
Jarrod?
Yeah, it was cool seeing Mike Coulter having all these years later and him having done so much. And the idea that setting up this idea that Frankie is too afraid to, for whatever reason, is too afraid to let his fighters go all the way. And then Willie does. I think I like the scene where Frankie is on his couch watching that fight.
That's a good scene. Yep.
And I thought that stuff was really handled very effectively.
Yeah, this one thing that I will give this movie, and I think that is one of the strengths of Clint's work, is that it is very aware of and in touch with exactly how poor people can be, where like they're trying to find almost immediately they're pushing Clint's car, or maybe it's Big Willie's car. It's like a shared car. They have to push it backwards out of the parking spot. Later, they talk about trying to find a buyer for it. There's mention of like, they want to give Maggie's gym dues back until Clint finds out that she paid 6 months in advance and now he can't. He couldn't possibly. She like saves a half-eaten, badly cooked steak from her waitressing job to take home, and then has to lie that it's
Something
for
I
a
used to do
dog.
all the time,
Yeah.
just to be clear. And I lived with my parents still, so you can just do that for pleasure. Just
and then when she's at home, she's eating the steak. She's just pouring out her change.
Yeah, it's almost like A1 sauce or something. Like she's pouring quarters on the steak for flavor.
Yeah.
That restaurant where she works is on the Venice Boardwalk. It has since been extraordinarily bougified, and I went there once and had way too expensive of waffles.
Sounds right.
And they were just okay, and they didn't have any shade. So a hearty fuck you to the waterfront restaurant. And I was fine. I mean, whatever. But it's interesting that now it looks like a Warby Parker location in there or whatever. It's like extremely Instagram.
It's like very, very much Venice now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But you're saying that there's multiple types of poverty we see here, which is great. And I think for a lot of professional fighters, if not just sports people in general, right up until the moment that you are successful, you're often struggling to make it, which is accurate.
And then this is why they have to, like, you know, Rocky gets like defrauded off screen in between whichever Rocky movies it is, just to return him to an interesting and relatable milieu.
Polly threw all his money away on some bad investments.
That's what it was. Yeah. Fucking Polly. He was trying to get more robot wives. Have you guys seen the recut of Rocky IV where he took out the robot? Do you remember this? A couple years ago, Stallone recut Rocky IV Coppola style and like put it back in theaters as like a Fathom event with no robot. Did you guys see it?
I heard about this and I didn't see it.
It was pretty good. I think it loses what's special about the original Rocky IV. There's way fewer montages.
The special cheese.
No Brigitte Nielsen.
What?
She's pretty much out of the movie.
Holy shit. Well, is that something personal, do you think? Because were they married?
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. And then she was with Flavor Flav, if we'll recall. Yeah, I mean, I think that this part of the movie is effective, but it does also contain danger. What's his last name? We got to talk about Baruchel.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but we do have to talk about Jay Baruchel as Danger Barch. It's much longer than that, the name.
Dangerous Dillard fighting Flippo Bam Bam Barch.
Now, in that interview with Amy Taubin, Clint explicitly refers to this character as the retarded boy. I think I read it as him assuming that is just the proper descriptor to use.
Yeah.
I did not. I was on the fence about this character throughout. Speaking of Tropic Thunder with Jay Baruchel and the sort of the famous Simple Jack sequence of that, it is very difficult to tell what level of intellectual disability he's supposed to be playing.
Well, one of the only non-terrible choices around this story, I mean, I think lots of people with intellectual disabilities are not necessarily at the extremes that, you know, we see on film. So I think that in itself is fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I occasionally work with folks with intellectual disabilities, and whenever they're like a new day group comes to one of the events that I'm working at, there have been a number of occasions where I have to figure out if someone is on staff or not. Yeah. Because sometimes folks are like highly verbal and conversationalists, like great conversationalists, and then you figure out that for whatever reason they are a part of this day group. But I think the performance, first of all, he's reading, it reminds me of like when like a high school lit teacher is reading Faulkner out loud and like reading the like transliterated accent.
Okay. The dialogue in particular.
He says I got no problems or whatever. Like there's no like life to the dialect at all. And he also, like, it's hard to tell if he's just kind of dumb, if he's a Forrest Gump type. Like, it's just not a real way that a person has ever been.
Yeah, I'm loath to put this on Jay Baruchel. The whole character is awful. Almost every single interaction he has is either saccharine and ridiculous in the case of like the last few in particular, or
he's trying to figure out how they put the ice in the water bottle.
Yeah. Yep.
He does have probably the best laugh in the movie, where he's laughing at Hilary Swank's joke about how the floor's got titties, and then he goes, "Hey, look at me, I'm Shawrell," and it just falls to the ground. Yeah, which, like, he's got comic timing. What can I say? Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, Canadian from Mont Royal, which is French for the Royal Mountain. That's what they call it up there.
Yeah.
Which I think just kind of speaks to like you better be like dialed in on your performance when you get to that set. He's not gonna modulate you. I mean, pretty much what you come in with is what you're gonna see.
Famously, I watched an interview with Baruchel trying to figure out if he ever said anything about like how I shouldn't have done this. This was a huge mistake. I owe a lot of people like reparations of some kind. Never said any of that, but he was saying the thing people always say, which is that you're not going to get any direction from Clint, and he'll say like, that's fine. And then you start thinking, oh no, he hates me. And then someone else, in this case, Morgan Freeman, who Baruchel did like a half impression of, I'll say. Morgan Freeman basically told him if he doesn't say anything, that means he likes it, which is fairly damning of Clint in this case. And then we've also got briefly, they're just kind of there for flavor, but it's interesting that they are two people who've become much, much more successful. We got Anthony Mackie as Sharrell and Michael Pena as Omar. Michael Pena, who will be in The Mule, I think. He'll come back for a Clint film.
Dangerously close to Chicano voice from Michael Pena, which
really
is I totally
bad.
put on Clint Eastwood and Paul Haggis, both real classic moves from them.
There's a moment when Freeman's voiceover is introducing Sharrell, and he says, it's a left hook that could move a tank, and then you see Anthony Mackie throwing the weakest fucking punches you've ever seen.
Yeah. It's funny because like Mackie is obviously in very good shape, but in this and in Pain and Gain, something about him, like I just don't believe him as like a physical threat. I think
they have several other people in the backgrounds who are 5 times more intimidating. Just get one of them in the ring for a second.
Mackie's having a big 2004. His first movie role is in 8 Mile, which is like a few years before this. And then he's having a big 2004 because same year he's in She Hate Me, the Spike Lee movie. Yep. And he's got a small role in Jonathan Demme's Manchurian Candidate, which is actually quite good.
It is. Yeah, it's freakier than you remember.
Also, that year he did a movie for Spike on Showtime called Sucker Free City. That's also quite good.
Oh shit, I haven't seen that.
Nice.
I gotta check that out. And then Pena, like Paul Haggis, is a scienceologist.
Yeah.
Which is a type of religion that they have here in Los Angeles. Let's talk about Haggis for a second. So this guy, he wrote this movie on spec and apparently took a long time to get it greenlit. Even once Clint got involved, they were having trouble finding enough money for it. Warner Brothers would only give him the go-ahead once Clint got half the money from Lakeshore Entertainment. So this and is it Mystic River? He does a couple with Lakeshore, like co-productions with Lakeshore around this time.
That might be Lakeshore, yeah.
Yeah, that's the jumpy guy. The little jumpy boy.
It is the jumpy boy.
I recently saw, I forgot what it was. I saw a trailer for a movie coming out that had, it was the Exorcist Believer trailer, which had a brief flash of the Morgan Creek logo. And for some reason, this filled me with so much comfort and joy to see a big Morgan Creek logo again. I don't know, as a movie poisoned guy, sometimes those shingles just make you feel good.
Yeah, just all sorts of stuff will get me revved up.
TSG is that's the living statue man who shoots the arrow?
Yeah, that's the Odysseus, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, do you have any favorite shingles, any favorite production company logos of this kind?
I was Orion was a favorite.
Oh, of course.
I like the Scott Free one.
Several eras. Yeah, the little bird.
But and it's all paintings, and that same person does, I think it's the end credits for Robin Hood, which is otherwise not a very good Ridley Scott movie, but it's got more stuff like that. But we haven't even mentioned, at some point here, Clint, I think, fully switched over to the black and white Warner Brothers logo that he'll keep for the remainder of his career. It was around Mystic River. He's done it a couple times before, like he did it on Bird and maybe Bridges or something, but he's like firmly in black and white now. I don't know.
Yeah.
So Haggis writes the script based on the story from FX Tool. Haggis basically just like explodes this same year. 2004 is the year of Paul Haggis.
Well, backing up just a second, he met Al Ruddy on Walker, Texas Ranger. That's how that's how they got to know each other.
Damn. So Clint is the one who presents the Best Picture Oscar to Al Ruddy, who, folks, yes, the Miles Teller character from The Offer was a real person. A lot of people are saying they made up this crazy story. So Albert Ruddy was the producer of The Godfather. Clint presents Best Picture that year. That's when he makes a crack about Sacheen Littlefeather, who had been on stage a few hours prior. And then they're working together on this one. Did Haggis, who created Walker, Texas Ranger?
I think it was Haggis, and I think Ruddy maybe gotten credit for it, and there's like two other people, I think.
No, that's the show where Haley Joel Osment has AIDS.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so Clint comes on here. Have you guys seen Crash? I've never seen Crash.
Oh, I've seen Crash. It's hard because it's such a touch point for like trash filmmaking, Oscar baity stuff, race
Crash
relations.
filmmaking.
I think it is all that and worse somehow, in my opinion.
Expand.
It basically takes the idea that having complex conversations about race means recognizing that sometimes white people are mean to black people, sometimes black people are also stereotyping, just sort of taking like level 1B discussion about an ethical problem, a real social problem, and saying, well, this is just about the bravest thing you could do. And I think it was in that era of Babel and this idea where like stories coming together is also an extremely genius thing to do to show that humans...
the kind of the broad, the hyperlink cinema, I think they sometimes call it.
Okay, great. There you go. I guess that just doesn't work for me. It's also just feels... Well, I mean, in theory, I guess I should say that's like lots of novels, and that's fine in novel
isn't that
writing.
Also like Grand Hotel? Like, it's not like they invented this in...
Yeah, yep.
It has nothing to do with the internet, I don't think. Jarrod, you were going to say something about Crash?
I saw it once, but we talk about broad strokes of, that's prime example.
Yes.
Do you think Paul Haggis would have directed that draft of Crash? Just kidding. He freaking did. Crash, by the way, has some of the guys who are in some of the movies that we have and will watch. You got your Michael Pena is in that one too. Ryan, is it Philippi? Ryan, definitely Ryan is in that one. He's going to be in Flags of Our Fathers next week. Did Fichtner ever do a Clint? Would have been good. Sandra Bullock apparently was considered for the Maggie Fitzgerald role. I don't think it would have been nearly as good because I don't think
she wanted Shekhar Kapoor to direct.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I don't think that's. Do you guys like Bullock? I'm not a Bullock guy.
I do.
Yeah, Ian.
I think there's some good Bullock stuff. Yeah, I think she could do comedy decently well.
To me, she just reads as mean, and then she was married to the Nazi biker guy. Like, she just seems like, I feel scared of her, but not in like a interesting way, the way I feel scared of Clint Eastwood or, I don't know, Rebecca Ferguson or something.
I've never heard a bad thing about her, for what it's worth.
She and I both appeared on the long-running It's Academic high school decathlon game show in the Washington, D.C. area. Not at the same time.
You sort of feel like on equal footing to criticize her as you please.
Competitors.
Yep, sure.
Anyway, I'm sure she's a very nice person. I don't know. But maybe she should be in jail. Who can say?
Okay. Yeah.
But so he makes Crash, and he also co-writes Flags of Our Fathers, so we will not be rid of Paul Haggis for a little while. I think he has a story credit on Letters from Iwo Jima as well.
Didn't he do a draft of Casino Royale too? I like Casino Royale a lot.
One of those guys he was attached. I think he wrote like a draft of a Watchmen movie that messed a bunch of it up, and I think maybe Dr. Manhattan did 9/11 or something. Like, this is real. Like, he did a bunch of crazy stuff. Wow. And also been credibly accused of sexual assault by a number of people and had to pay like $10 million as a result of a civil lawsuit. So Paul Haggis is not invited on the show. So then Maggie comes into his life. We're both California boys. We're both some of these coastal elite types. Jarrod, you've been in Los Angeles for a long time, but you are from the great state of Alabama.
Correct.
Also type of coastal elite.
That's the Gulf coastal elite. He's elite, that's for sure. You should play freaking Valorant with this guy. Yeah. I only know about Valorant because Ian said it to me the other day.
I don't know what that is.
But I want to talk about, there's Hilary Swank is from a trailer park. Like, she grew up in a trailer park in Tacoma, Washington. And yet the movie positions her explicitly as a redneck type character from the Ozarks, from Missouri, from Winter's Bone territory. Do you, Jarrod, as a Hollywood bigwig and also an Alabaman, how do you feel about this kind of like, there's a particular anti-rural chauvinism that implies that you can't be like, you can be an ignorant white person from Bakersfield. Many people are doing it as we speak,
Yeah. It's I thought that was my least favorite part of the movie was the family and the weird fat shamey stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like her brother's in jail and her mother weighs 312 pounds. These are like equivalent.
Trouble comes by the pound.
Yeah, trouble comes by the pound. Yeah,
it's Margot Martindale. I'd love to bring up Justified on the podcast, and of course, she's one of the biggest heroes. Not a literal hero in the TV show, but I love her on Justified.
Love Margot.
And she's only here as like you said, a stereotype of hillbillies, of
welfare queens.
White welfare queens. Yeah.
Which I think like the Crash style, hey, we shouldn't be racist because there are white people doing this stuff that we say is bad when black people do it too. I think that appeals to the kind of underexamined libertarian post-racial stuff that you see in a lot of Clint movies.
Well, California libertarian, as we often call him. Yeah, that's right up his alley. I will say that was the heaviest libertarian element. And then I was sort of surprised because the central ethical challenge of the film is basically about a person who suffers in a way that they didn't deserve somehow, right? Which I feel like is the ultimate anti-libertarian sentiment, to recognize that actually some people who are suffering, it was not their fault or like their personal bootstrap failure that they didn't do well enough. So that was a nice surprise. I don't think it comes to any kind of interesting resolution.
I mean, we do also get mention of like real racism, the kind that doesn't come up in Bird, for example, when we talked about the sort of trip down south in Bird. But like Frankie mentions that, I think it's Scrap's last fight, they were south of the Mason-Dixon line and they had to like walk. Or maybe it wasn't the last fight, but it was one of their fights. They had to walk a couple of miles, and Frankie says he was worried about being lynched, I assume, for like associating with a black man.
Which is exactly how it comes up in Bird, I should say, is because Roddy, Red Rodney, what's his name?
Red Rodney.
Red Rodney, he is also
Albert
afraid of being lynched because he's in a mixed band.
Yeah.
Before I forget, just going back to the family, I love when they come in and she's in the hospital and they spent like a few days at Universal Studios, and her brother already has his sleeves cut off on his Universal Studios shirt.
Yeah.
He wasted no time. That's a good question maybe for the future. Have either of you ever had to buy a pair of scissors while on vacation that you were going to throw away before you got on the airplane? I've done this with toenail clippers.
I have not. I don't think I have.
Yeah. You can bring toenail clippers home with you.
Not if you're scared like me.
Okay.
You can't.
Yeah.
You don't want to get detained at the Copenhagen airport or whatever. As a theme park loser piece of shit, I was very interested in at what point in the process did
they decide Universal, not Disney?
Well, no, I'm going to say specifically because he says you've been spending all your time with Woody and Mickey. Of course, referring to at the time, the Mickey analog at Universal Studios was Woody Woodpecker.
Yeah.
Basically, no one noticed this. It was like, you're either parked in the Woody section or you're parked in the Jurassic parking section or the Frankenstein lot or whatever. They have a walk around Woody, but no one cares about Woody Woodpecker in 2004. They they got the theme park rights to Harry Potter, and then the Minions now are the Mickey of Universal, Shrek and the Minions. But like, it's not in the story. In the story, he says something about you've been spending too much time with Mickey and Donald Duck. But someone at some point here has been to Universal Studios enough that they make sure that Clint refers to Woody Woodpecker, the mascot of Universal Studios, and I want answers. So listeners, if any of you know, if anyone can dig up a picture of Clint Eastwood at Universal Studios posing with Woody Woodpecker, $500 reward. Just contact Ian Ryan for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is about when you said you came to LA around this time, right, Jarrod? Early 2000s?
2003.
Okay.
2003. Got it. Did you go to Universal Studios at that time?
I have never been to Universal Studios.
Oh my God.
Ooh, wow.
Talk about
it's
poverty. This man's being deprived.
I'm gonna take the kids one day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you have children. You got to take them over there to show them the Minions. It's too bad that they no longer have Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review for you to show the kids, which is where Beetlejuice and a bunch of Universal monsters perform like rockin' versions of I Put a Spell on You or whatever.
That sounds great.
They also had Spider-Man the musical.
Lauren Boebert's there.
Is she?
That's true. That's what I've been
for
hearing. Yeah.
Look, we haven't talked about it on this show for obvious reasons. It's not at all relevant. But since you brought it up,
never stopped us before, so it's not at all.
I don't support
jacking off comes up all the time.
Yeah. I don't support Lauren Boebert almost in basically anything that she does. I will say what she was doing in that musical is how Beetlejuice would behave during a live performance.
True. She's honoring the spirit of the work. She was
true to and also, like, do we really need to be defending Beetlejuice the musical? I don't know. I haven't seen it. Jarrod, you didn't produce that, did you?
No, I did not. I wish I did. I would probably be a lot wealthier.
Yeah.
We go to Universal every day.
Yeah, the season pass. The Minions took over Terminator 2 3D, by the way, which is despicable. Hey, speaking of despicable, I didn't even mean to do that. Wow. So then we've got these, the fight sequences. I should say Lucia Riker is in, there's a documentary about women in boxing, but specifically about her from 1999 called Shadow Boxers that I watched last night. You can rent it on YouTube. Quite good. Enjoyed it quite a bit. She's very winning. She seems like a good person who just likes to do boxing. And then she went on to be a boxing trainer for a while. And at one point there was some kind of beyond the pale head injury to her boxer's opponent. And she like rushed in and applied first aid in the ring while they got the real doctors there. So basically she did the opposite of what her character does in this film. So
we have to talk. I have to say, I had to humble myself a little bit. I often try to encourage people to historicize events, and I think a big part of that is understanding when social change has occurred. And I will admit that I was totally overestimating the world's progressiveness when it comes to female boxers. This was a very, very, very recent development. This film is not at all some kind of like holdover idea. I'll say I think the first professional boxing license in Britain was issued in 1997, I think, or maybe 1999.
Well, the in Shadow Boxers, they do talk to a woman who's, I think she was the founder of the Women's International Boxing Federation, who is from some wonderfully accented town in England, where she says like, I took me wages and I got some gloves. And then like she says like, we had to, you had to drive all over England to find the other woman who would box you. But he, as Clint calls it, Frankie calls it the latest freak show. It was Lucia Riker, I think, was one of the first women to get like a world title in professional boxing. There's also some great Golden Gloves, like amateur women's boxing sequences in that documentary, including they like show the woman's name, the weight class, and then their job, because they're not professional boxers. Yeah. So it's whatever, it's name and like featherweight and whatever. And then, but there was one who was a middleweight literary agent, which I thought was very funny, because like it's New York City Golden Gloves, like
yeah.
But it's, I mean, Riker's career after this does point to something that I'd like to talk about, which is like boxing movies often show, and this movie even I think mentions that like champs don't make good trainers or whatever, or maybe that was the documentary, whatever. Everything is happening all at once to me. The movie positions like becoming a boxing trainer or like running a gym as sort of a sad consolation prize to someone who isn't good enough to be the champ. And I think this is consistent with broader kind of poisonous messaging that we get from your capitalists and the like, that you either have to be exceptional or there's no reason to live, when like, I don't know, running a boxing gym is a much safer way to have a career in boxing than being a prize fighter, And it's also like, it's interesting that it's so much less respectable somehow, at least in these boxing movies, to have a small business, which is what a lot of Clint claims to love those guys, but somehow it's pitiful and like, why are you buying the expensive bleach kind of precarious.
Yeah, I think the only times it's ever portrayed as positive is if it's like an inner city rescue operation, right? You're doing it to drag these kids. And I will say that in reality, it's great that these places exist as a community spot for people to develop discipline and health. And I think, the vast majority of people who train in boxing do not compete professionally or even an amateur. So you're mostly just like helping people understand their bodies and get their heart rate up and maybe develop some self-defense skills. So it's very nice. Although I will say that I read the other day that Andy Murray, the famous tennis player, was hired as the personal trainer of one of David Beckham's kids who decided he wanted to become a professional tennis player. And I will say that seems demeaning to me. That was quite sad to think about. Just the idea of like a person's kid being able to take one of the greatest tennis players who's ever lived and turn you into like a little coach guy.
Talk about Richard Pryor. Sort of the toy type situation.
That's right.
Hilary Swank is, this is like, she's got a kind of interesting career because she's one of very few people, I think there's like 5, to win Best Actress for consecutive roles. Like she doesn't do a movie between
her consecutive roles.
Wait.
Yeah. Talking about Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah, wait, did I get this?
She did Insomnia in between.
Yeah, maybe it's like to win for 2 consecutive nominations or something. Whatever.
That sounds right.
She did some special good thing. She as we all know, her first film role is in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She's like
the film.
Yeah, very recognizable in it. Like she looks like you think, oh, it's Hilary Swank. And then, Boys Don't Cry, her big sort of breakout, and she has said all of the right things about how she wouldn't take that role now. So shout out to Hilary Swank for just being normal. She's also in The Gift, the Sam Raimi film written by Billy Bob Thornton about his own psychic mother. Very strange film. And then before this, she's in The Core. I would have assumed that was after this, but The Core, kind of a cool movie, also quite bad. And then she's in the Black Dahlia. Brian De Palma's The Black Dahlia, shot in like Romania for Los Angeles. Sorry, Bulgaria. Excuse me. And kind of has like Ian. You and I were texting about how she never, for someone this famous, she doesn't really have like the big hits that you would think.
And I think we were both emphasizing that that's not a slight against her. She just kind of has an outsized place in like cultural discussion, sometimes unfair cultural discussion, when I think she's more often in, like you're saying, either kind of semi-successful sci-fi blockbusters or, these things that don't usually springboard somebody into the discussion. Well,
I think Freedom Writers and P.S. I Love You were both 2007.
Yeah.
And I think they were both, they made an impact despite not getting...
P.S. I Love You, I remember being quite popular. At least
so that movie was big. But then I think Freedom Writers quickly became like a teacher has a hangover staple in high school English classes.
Also, I think there was that time where she attended the birthday party of like a war criminal.
Yep. Yeah. So
I don't know about this.
She went to an event in Grozny, Chechnya on the 35th birthday of Chechen President Ramzan Kadyrov in October 2011. Wow. She wished him happy birthday, Mr. President, and she even said, I do my research. Don't say that. Shouldn't have said that.
Say anything.
And then later
that.
She had to.
I never do my research.
Yeah, and then she said she was unaware. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that she hadn't done it. So just don't say that you did.
And she spoke. She spoke at the event, which was even worse, about what a good guy he was.
That's the kind of thing. Speaking of Kevin Spacey, that's the kind of thing you do after you've been banned from Hollywood. Like Kevin Spacey just played like the first president of Croatia in some movie because that's, he's got to go pretty far away to get people to still want him in their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Nick Cage unbearable weight of massive talent thing, right? Where you're like, over the hill and you need to make some cash to maintain your lifestyle.
15 minutes with the Saudi. You know about this?
No, I don't know about this either.
She was paid $500,000 for 15 minutes of her time. Okay, this piece of information was revealed by Harvey Weinstein. So, you know what? We're going to back off. We're going to go ahead and...
I'll also just say that Eric Garcetti, similarly, just doing free promo for MBS when he comes to town. So she's,
hey,
not alone.
Back to
certainly.
MDB. She also famously so she wore the dress backwards at the Oscars when she won. And then she went to Astro Burger, which is I don't know if it's still there. It was like a diner in West Hollywood that
It's still there.
it is. Ian and I went there a couple times.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of newspapers with pictures of Hilary Swank in there.
Mhm.
That's pretty good. Don't eat burgers anymore, but I remember liking them. Now, Jarrod, have you been to the Oscars?
I have not. I know we've had clients nominated for Oscars, but I myself have never gone.
You're a producer on Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah, and our client co-wrote the movie, was nominated for,
and that was maybe
screenplay.
the toughest Oscars to get invited to in the history of the
weirdest.
That was the weird Grand Central or Union Station,
Union
whatever.
Station.
Yeah. So you haven't been. You've not been to Hollywood's biggest night.
No.
But what does it mean for you professionally? I mean, I think as a huge fan of the aforementioned film, I will say that obviously I don't think it needs that type of affirmation, but of course it, professionally, I'm sure opens a lot of doors and, probably gets you just more money, which is always nice sometimes. So I don't know. What do you think about it? It's also often made fun of, right? As a place where kind of schlocky films go to get rewarded for things they don't deserve.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, it was a big, up until like a certain point, I could name pretty much every winner.
Yep.
And at a certain point, once you see how the sausage is made,
right,
it becomes less of a, it's nice to, especially when you think, it's something Louis Mayer invented just to keep actors from for asking for more money.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
It is cool to be honored for your work, I suppose.
Let's look at the Oscars this one.
I was checking it out because it seems undeserving, which is also a ridiculous thing to say because I agree with you, Jarrod. I'm not sure how meaningful the Oscars are ultimately, but it's a weird year. You got Sideways.
It was not a good year for movies.
So the Best Picture noms, because it wins Best Picture, it's $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood, Albert S. Ruddy, and Tom Rosenberg producers. The Aviator, of course, Michael Mann produced that film because he was developing, I think he wanted Jim Carrey to play Howard Hughes, but I think it would have been mostly the PP part and not as much of the airplane part. Shout out to Long Beach. We just talked about that on our Bloodwork episode. Yeah. Bruce Goose used to be down there. Finding Neverland was one of the 5 Best Picture nominees.
Really dropped off the map.
Ray, Taylor Hackford film.
Is Eternal Sunshine get nominated for Best Picture? No, just
Sideways.
No.
Eternal Sunshine gets Screenplay, Best Actress, and that's it for the big boys. So then you've also got Best Director. Clint wins Best Director, beats Marty for The Aviator. The Aviator, look, it's not Scorsese's best film in my opinion, but he doesn't have an Oscar yet for Best Director, and Clint does. And this is not Clint's best directed movie.
Yeah, it's definitely this movie didn't exist before June of that year. Mm-hmm. They started shooting in June and were ready by December. And it was, there's no festival appearances. It was just...
Although, that's impressive directing when you think about it. Took Marty, years to work on that thing? Lazy fuck.
Lazy hillbilly ass, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Shot in 32 days. 5 of them were half days.
That's nice. Now, that is, look, that's good working. Taylor Hackford, also nominated for Best Director. Alexander Payne for Sideways. And Mike Leigh for Vera Drake. Would love to know what Clint and Mike Leigh said to each other. I mean, 2 equally prickly guys, I think. I would imagine.
Yeah. Yep.
Although in the awards season, Eastwood told Michael Moore he was going to kill him if he showed up at his doorstep or something.
And around this time, this is when
I've not
Clint Eastwood
heard
said he
about
was going to come to Michael Moore's doorstep and shoot him with a gun, I believe is what he said.
Or if you show up at my front door with a camera, I'll kill you. And then everybody started laughing, and he goes, I mean it.
That was a little weird.
Yeah, Clint in public, man. Not dependable, I will say.
Clint is also nominated for Best Actor.
He's good in this.
He is good in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp for Finding Neverland. Don Cheadle for Hotel Rwanda. Leonardo DiCaprio for The Aviator. And then Jamie Foxx wins for Ray. I think that's deserving. I think he's very good in that movie. Swank wins for $1 Million Baby. Annette Bening wins for, say it with me, Being Julia. We all remember Being Julia, the Istvan Szabo movie, based on a novel by W. Somerset Maugham. Catalina Sandino Moreno for Maria Full of Grace, Imelda Staunton for Vera Drake, and Kate Winslet for Eternal Sunshine. And then Morgan Freeman wins for $1 Million Baby. over Alan Alda from The Aviator. Forgot he was in it. Thomas Hayden Church for Sideways. Jamie Foxx for Collateral. He's nominated twice. Pretty good work for Jamie.
Ooh, and he's so good in Collateral.
Yeah.
And Clive Owen in Closer. Interesting that Collateral isn't nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah,
Anything.
what a
miss.
miss. Collateral,
Yeah.
among the most rewatched 2004
Eternal
films for
Sunshine.
me, I'm sure.
Motorcycle Diaries. Spider-Man 2. I mean, Spider-Man 2 is better than Finding Neverland, probably. I didn't see it, but I didn't see Finding Neverland, to be clear. Shark Tale, Shrek 2. You know, where are these in the if they did the 10 this year? Man on Fire. Yeah.
Oh.
Looking at this other stuff. At least Passion of the Christ didn't get nominated for Best Picture. Now it probably would. The Village. The Village is pretty good. Did The Village win cinematography? Because that's a Deakins.
Oh, really?
They didn't even get nominated. Oh, Robert Richardson won for The Aviator. That's okay, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
Caleb Deschanel shot The Passion of the Christ, which is one of the uglier movies that I've seen, in my opinion. Also, John Matheson for Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera, nominated for Best Cinematography.
Wow.
This is the
Emmy Rossum,
from our
from
last week's
Mystic
episodes.
River. We got to talk about the stool. Talk about the stool of it all. So Maggie gets paralyzed with a C1, C2, complete spinal cord injury. She is put into a rehab facility where she gets pressure ulcers that stink, and they're so bad that she needs to get her leg amputated. My girlfriend works in healthcare. She has worked in skilled nursing facilities. This is like FBI raid bad treatment. Like this just
the level of neglect for those bed sores.
Yeah, like they just the movie treats the doctors in this movie act like this is the first person who's ever had this kind of spinal cord injury. Like they couldn't possibly have foreseen this. Like they have a nurse comes and like moves you around. It's very standard. Well, I don't know. What do you guys think of this sort of section of the movie?
I mean, it's like if like no mention is made of the fact that half decent care would have prevented all this stuff, or like rehab could have helped her get out and about in a wheelchair, or so it's like, well, guess I better die.
Wheelchairs that you control with breath and stuff. Like there's a lot of
which I'm supportive of. Like if someone wants to end their life, that's their choice. But like it called for a more nuanced take on that.
Yeah,
and it's just like it feels a little mean spirited. She gets punished for chasing her dream, and what are we supposed to take away from this? Like, what are we supposed to learn? I think I'm not quite sure. Like, because if it's about Frankie's guilt, then he should have been the one convincing her that she needed to fight. And you don't get any of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. First of all, Jared, that for real people, there's been very few times in my life where I face anything like this extreme of suffering, but certainly the option of ending your life is one that I think should be extended to all people who have already been offered supportive psychiatric care, and they know the decision they're making, but I also think that nobody else knows your subjective experience better than you do. So certainly that's fine if that's the decision you come to. It's a very difficult one, I'm sure. I think that the problem that you and I discussed, Jake, is that as one of the only films representing people with disabilities, particularly extreme disabilities like this, it becomes much tougher when there's so little attention paid to, like, what are the actual experiences of these people. You're saying, Jared, like, I mean, we get the little city college thing as I think a reference to that type of choice, right? So like, well, you could still live a rich life of a kind, and it's basically just like given no consideration, right? Like, don't be ridiculous. This, of course,
thinking
would not be
about
worth
it
living
outside
for.
of modeling the moves, there's very little that a 74-year-old boxing trainer can do that a person who doesn't have the use of their arms and legs can't do. Like she could absolutely be a trainer. She can see and speak. And Ian and I were looking at this statement from the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, DREDF. When your acronym is most of the way to dreadful, you should probably take another look at it. But anyway, this is a statement from February 2005. They say that the Oscar-nominated movie $1 Million Baby advances the offensive and dangerous message that death is preferable to life with a disability. Talk about how she could become a motivational speaker. She could go to school. She could write a novel. There's all kinds of meaningful lives that you can have after an injury like this with proper care. And they also mention, of course, that she is entitled to ask the facility to take her off of life support machines. Like, that doesn't count as assisted suicide. You can basically say, I legally, you can say, I don't want to live with these machines. Please turn them off. And they will give you a sedative, and theoretically you could survive, or it could mean the end of your life, but you can make that choice yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, I mean, something that's possible in California, certainly not available to all people around the world, unfortunately, particularly, I think, very religious countries. And yeah, I just want to clarify, I also don't think that it has to be a happy ending to the film.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
In that the interview that you mentioned, Jake, Clint Eastwood says is about the failure of the American dream. That I think is something I'm very not just sympathetic towards, but actually think is most of the time true, right? Most of those dreams do not come true. And a film that comes up almost every week here, Fat City, a film about boxers who do not hit it big in their lives, are extremely depressing to watch. I think that's fine. That's great cinematic material, but it's turned into this weird soapbox for, he said, you either make it big or your life is so worthless that you shouldn't really even be alive.
It's just, the whole thing is just hinges on the twist.
Right.
Yeah. And not dealing with the ramifications of that, you know, and knowing that this thing is going to really affect people when they see it, but not from a storytelling standpoint. It feels a little bare.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real debate about the right to die, which seems like a very libertarian friendly cause. None of that comes up. Clint basically, technically murders her with her apparent consent. I mean, she does bite her tongue off to try to die, which is, pretty metal.
Yeah.
Gotta admire it. She then pulls the stitches out with, I assume, some kind of incredible tooth dexterity. But it doesn't get into any of that. We also found out that around the same time, and mentioned by this statement from the Dread, Clint was fairly recently had won a suit over an ADA complaint by a woman named Diane Zumbrunnen. A lot of Dutch people around here. I don't know what's going on.
Got to look into this immediately.
She wanted to use his Mission Ranch resort in Carmel in 1996, but they didn't have a ramp to the registration office. Some ADA non-compliant stuff. And Clint went to court. He says, if you're right, you got to hold your ground. And says that he is fighting for small business people. Actually, he just says business people. He doesn't say small. But basically points out that at the time, there is no recourse for someone experiencing somebody who wants to complain about ADA non-compliance. There's nothing they can do except sue. There's no fix-it ticket system. There's no hey, I noticed this. You have 90 days to comply or whatever.
Yeah. I think that would be great.
But then he basically says this is just a place for money grubbing lawyers to take advantage of disabled people and also of me, Clint Eastwood. The film also has one of these money grubbing lawyer characters and speaks to a broader kind of anti-litigation theme throughout Clint's personal and film life. But I don't know. I think if you're a really, really rich guy who has a resort, you should put in a ramp, you know?
Yeah, he's among the people most responsible and most within their means to be able to resolve these difficulties. And like you said, the fix-it ticket idea, I think, is great. I think basically every disability activist is aware. You know, I've been on crutches a few times in my life.
Yeah, and you will be again soon, by the way.
In progressive cities like San Francisco. And it's, that's your dream for me. And it's hell. I will say that even places that are supposedly very compliant, you know, half the metro stations don't have elevators broken. And the other half, the elevators don't work half the time. So, yeah. And then, you know, it's also just navigating a place with 600 people trying to get on and off buses and trains, and it's awful. And now I live in Mexico, where unfortunately a lot of the cities and businesses just don't have the money to make these accommodations. And it means that for people with disabilities, it's basically just impossible to participate in lots of parts of society, which is miserable. So like we were talking about a little bit, Jake, off pod, I think this is not something that you can resolve with a profit motive, because it's not really incentivizable, right? It doesn't make sense. It's a fairly small percentage of the population and your, potential customer base. So we just have to be in a different society. And unfortunately, one that I think is worth fighting for, but it's a big shift to say we need to make these accommodations just standardized and just not an option, right? For basically every place that has the money to do them, or have the government step in for the places that don't. This just shouldn't really be something that's left to either rich people who won't want to do it, or businesses and people who don't have the money to do it.
This is
it's just not really like an individual issue.
A site of one of the failures of relying on market forces to keep people treating each other like human beings. Just making it a monetary punishment, a literal capital punishment to not comply with something like this. People are just going to throw more money at getting around it.
Yeah, and then they start to hate the people who are asking for this, right? They become either like whiners or the lawyers are the bad people or whatever.
Yeah, and then you get this like second sort of symbiotic group of people who have figured out a way to make money off of this transaction. Money is the root of all evil, to paraphrase Dr. John. I won't get into how he or I feel about women. Well, I'll get into how I think that they're exactly the same as everybody else. Let's see, is there anything we haven't covered? Is there any stray thoughts?
Well, I will say I was doing some research because, of course, one of the greatest female boxers of all time, Layla Ali, daughter of Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest male boxers of all time, had to face some pretty similar chauvinism from her father. And I think she used that word, as male chauvinist, when it came to her boxing. And a lot of it is around the idea that women, even if it's not explicitly framed that way, are beauty objects. So putting them in danger, or the idea that they are frail inherently and can't withstand the pain or discipline requirements.
By the way, a lot of the trainers in that documentary, shadow boxers who started training women, male trainers who start training women, say that they're very impressed that their female trainees take a lot more of a beating before they start to complain. It's,
Sure. Yes, I believe this. Yeah. Yeah. So just interesting to consider that, again, I think Layla Ali, active in the 90s and, just still pushing back on that idea. I came across a fun fact that's not really related to the film, but maybe you guys are already aware of this. Doing some reading about Muhammad Ali, and during the Ali Frazier fight, using that as cover because the FBI was so interested in that, and at the time concerned about Nation of Islam attacks and tracking Ali. So taking advantage of their distraction, the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI raided an FBI field office, broke in, burglarized during the fight. And that is when they discovered the existence of COINTELPRO and publicized it in the Washington Post later that week. And of course, one of the people being monitored was Muhammad Ali himself. So just a weird boxing tidbit
that's fascinating.
Yeah, part of history. Certainly, bigger obvious things like Ali taking a stance on the Vietnam War and stuff. But, I just think maybe sport's not as inconsequential as people make them out to be, including myself as a young man.
Ali is maybe one of the most fascinating, compelling figures to ever live. Someone should make a movie about him.
Yep.
Love that guy. And here on the show, like Muhammad Ali, we are strongly opposed to Mr. Tooth Decay. Do you guys know about this? Have I brought this up on the show before?
No, I don't know about this.
Muhammad Ali didn't take great care of his teeth as a young person, I think, for all sorts of reasons. And then as he became very famous and well-known and respected by children, one of his pet causes was modeling proper dental hygiene. And so he put out a novelty record, sort of a narrative record called Muhammad Ali versus Mr. Tooth Decay, to help kids remember to brush their teeth and stuff. A real mensch.
Yeah, and I just had one more tidbit. This unfortunately is not funny or cool, but just thinking about real life boxing reform because of horrible injuries. I don't know if you guys are aware that male boxing used to have 15 rounds until the 80s. Yeah. Now it has 12 rounds and is very safe, of course. But the fight that triggered that transition, very famous boxing fight between Ray Mancini and a Korean boxer named Kim Duk-koo, They went all 15 rounds, and it was like a impressive fight from both sides. But basically, the brain damage that was done to Kim Doo-koo in the last 3 rounds put him into a coma, and he died shortly after. And all the people involved felt so guilty. Ray Mancini talked about it a lot. The fighter's mother flew from South Korea and then ended up killing herself.
Jesus Christ.
The referee ended up killing himself for not having stopped the fight. So just drawing attention to the fact that, yes, in the real world, there are also medical stakes for these things, and don't know if there's an obvious answer. Of course, some people will just say end blood sport or something. I think that's a little bit of a cute response to a world full of suffering positions and people opting to do things that are bad for their body. I don't see those people calling for the end of coal mining or something. But
I think also in the real world, the Maggie's opponent would have been disqualified or sued.
Oh yeah, after like the first the first off.
Yeah, there's a lot of below the belt shots in the movie.
And I think I think it's unfortunate when you have these real boxing stories that are so awful and affecting and complex, and then to opt to do this extremely maudlin version of it makes it even more frustrating to me, because it's not like it's not a setting where you could explore the same stuff in an interesting way.
Yeah.
Feels like a wasted expenditure of all these very famous people.
Exactly.
Of course, Frankie gives Maggie a kind of Rosebud style mysterious nickname.
He does.
Macushla, which is he's studying Gaelic and from a little book. And the movie takes place in some kind of fantastical world where a bunch of Irish people dressed very Irishly materialize wherever there's a boxing match. There's some off
at the match in England,
remark, but then really they're in Vegas too, or something. They just keep showing up, and Scrap says something about there's Irish people everywhere. It does feel almost mystical to me, and they're all chanting Macushla. They're all pronouncing it properly.
Well, it's also a fake phrase, not a real Gaelic phrase. It's like a distortion of a real phrase, but which I think is cute if it's Clint Eastwood's character making something up. But
there's a history of this phrase being used in cinema. Actually, it's spelled wrong. Let's see here. I believe it's in Christmas in Connecticut, which is a disappointingly not that cool or not that great Christmas movie with Barbara Stanwyck. She has a cow named Macushla. I think it was just at least an American Irish
interesting
idiom, but it apparently refers to, it means my darling or my blood. I think it comes from a phrase meaning the pulse of my heart or something like that.
Yeah,
but
exactly,
Ian, did you do the little homework assignment that I gave you?
I forgot to do the homework assignment, but I can make one up. I know a couple Irish words from my youth.
Ian and I are going to give each other little Irish nicknames here. And Jarrod, we're leaving you out of it because obviously it's going to be mean to each other. So you can be Macushla. You're the pulse and you're the darling of this podcast.
Yes, that's right.
But Ian, what have you got for me? Would you like me to go first?
No, I can go first. Well, one of the only phrases I know in Irish is, of course, go raibh magat, which means thank you. And I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, ni means no. So I would like to call you Ní go raibh magat, which I don't know if that makes sense, but I would like to give a big no thank you to everything you represent and your presence here.
I am going to call you Maslishta, which means my patch of green scum on the sea, my thick river mud. It has come to mean a layabout or an idler, a sluggard, but that's you. And I was looking at some other Irish curses and insults and things. If work was the bed, you'd sleep on the floor, you lazy gobshite. You're so ugly the tide wouldn't take you out. This guy's Jarrod. I don't know if you know about this guy. He's so cheap. So cheap he wouldn't give you the steam off his piss. They're doing some great stuff over there, the Irish. Shout out to Irish guys. Most of them.
Yeah.
Have you seen? There was a Twitter thread that was people getting slightly dressed up in Ireland and just proceeding to get roasted.
Oh no,
for it.
That sounds good.
Wow.
Irish roastings,
and that becoming their nicknames for life.
Oh no,
man,
that's so funny. There's a bunch of them for being cheap, which I think probably comes from pub culture and not getting your round or whatever.
Yeah,
but there's one you could peel an orange in his pocket.
Is it to not reveal that?
Or his pocket is so tight I guess. I don't know.
I see. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, here's
Give
one.
me.
Props to anyone who tries to be fashionable in Ireland. I wore a red beret once in Waterford, and someone called me Super Mario.
Not even a beret. Got a brim.
Yeah, great.
That's good. Yeah, I love what those guys are up to over there. Clint is, I believe, of English extraction. So, unfortunately,
the
he is
colonizers in that
an
relationship.
English dog.
Yeah,
And he should be shot down in the street by up the Rebs. We're always saying. Ian he's always doing what he calls a rebel yell. I'm confused by this. This doesn't sound like an Irish thing to me.
I'm not.
He's not doing that.
I am a fan of Irish liberation struggles, although in reading about Mystic River last week didn't come up, but I guess Whitey Bulger, also a big fan of Irish liberation struggles.
Sure.
And had a lot of abortive attempts he filled a fishing boat with guns and then tried to just send the fishing boat to Ireland.
I mean, this was like a whole thing
amateurish.
During there's a great episode of the Unclear and Present Danger podcast about Patriot games where they talk about the sort of Irish American people in Congress raising money to literally send Kalashnikovs to the IRA. Pretty cool.
Which is weird because I think now, of course, a lot of the people who are loud about their Irish ethnic heritage, they are not fan of many liberational struggles, particularly of non-white peoples.
Yeah.
They seem to be at odds with a lot of those.
Yeah, there's it's a bit of a minefield trying to be proud of your Irishness without being very weird and racist about it.
Yes. Yep.
Although, shout out to, speaking of Marty winning an Oscar, shout out to the Dropkick Murphys. Famously, a guy got on stage with the Dropkick Murphys once and threw a Sig Heil salute, and the singer tackled him and threw him off the stage and said,
"That's cool.
No Nazis are welcome here." So shout out to those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to play Shipping Up to Boston instead of the theme song on our Mystic River episode, and I forgot. So
it's okay. It's somehow one of the loudest songs in the world, so I think it's maybe good to not.
It's just
play
a guy yelling about how he lost his leg. All the words in that song are just "I lost my leg."
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the $1 million baby?
Where does this rank in your Clint?
It's pretty. It's on the lower end for me. It's going to be hard to say where I put it relative to the obviously unsuccessful films that are still more interesting, because this movie,
a Pink Cadillac or what?
Yeah, or even the other boxing films, the ones with the ape in them, because this just doesn't have. It's very smooth and efficient in a way that feels fake, as we've mentioned. None of it seems convenient and not of the real world and manipulative. So not too high for me, although it is effective, and I like seeing Morgan Freeman in the little hat. So hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
Is it toward the bottom of yours, Jarrod? Do you have a full ranking at this point?
I do, actually.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Let's see. What do we got? Give us some numbers.
Well, top. Okay, Unforgiven, Bridges.
Okay.
Perfect World.
Okay, good.
Great picks. Yeah.
Letters from Iwo Jima.
Mm-hmm.
Outlaw Josie Wales.
Mm-hmm.
High Plains Drifter. Yep. Richard Jewell.
Jewell's great.
Excellent selections.
Kind of a surprising late surge.
Absolutely,
from.
Oh no, sure.
That was when I was kind of like, oh, it was pretty good when I first watched it, but then I revisited it this summer, and it was like Paul Walter Hauser, probably the best performance in any Clint Eastwood movie.
Probably.
Yep.
Probably.
And then bottom, bringing up the rear, Iger Sanction.
Correct. Yes.
Firefox. Breezy.
Yeah.
Yep. All true.
Look, I like Firefox and the Iger Sanction maybe more than anyone alive. I'm learning, but I have a soft spot for those movies because I find them so fun. And I think I would put something I think those movies are better than The Rookie to me, at the very least.
The Rookie's not great, but it's also it's fun in a 80s action kind of way.
I mean, that's what I would say about Firefox and the Iger Sanction, 70s action.
I think there's parts of Firefox that are like that, and there's long stretches that are just nothing. So I understand where Jared's coming from.
Well, he's got to drive across the Soviet Union, Ian. He's busy.
But I'd say probably somewhere in the middle of the pack, I think now, $1 Million Baby for me.
Middle dollar baby. Is that anything? Well, with that, thank you very much, Jarrod Murray, for joining us today. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you're working on? Anybody you want to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, we made a little movie a few years ago called 1BR. If you're in the mood for a horror movie this spooky season. It's on pretty much every streaming service. It's a fun little like contained cult thriller.
Love those.
Just about the scariness of apartment hunting, how degrading that is to everybody involved.
That's part of it. And then This woman moves into an apartment building and finds out that everyone there is an occult.
Oh,
so
yeah, cool.
Great.
Kind of like The Sentinel, one of my favorite 70s horror movies. Great.
Murders, baby.
Check out 1BR. That, oh my God, it really is on all of them. AMC Plus, Freevee, Peacock, Plex, Pluto TV, Shudder, the Roku channel, and of course, Tubi, America's finest.
Oh, yeah.
Streaming service, excuse me. Did you guys see that Pam Grier tweeted something today to the effect of like, time for a Tubi weekend?
Whoa.
Yeah. And I believe Screen Slate tweeted, like the perfect woman doesn't exist. And then Pam Grier wants to watch Tubi. Shout out Tubi, shout out Pam Grier. That's about going to do it for us on our $1 Million Baby episode. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review, helps us on the algo. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, have it stitched on a custom silk robe. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Clint Eastwood podcast. You can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Next week, we're talking Flags of Our Fathers. Good film, in my opinion, starring the aforementioned Ryan. We'll figure out how to say his name for that episode. If you want to watch that, it's streaming on all the regular stuff. And also Fubo TV, friend of the show, Paramount Plus, Showtime, and Paramount Plus with Showtime. So a lot of options there. Ian, what about down there in Mexico? And I'm going to do a Ryan Phillippe impression.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see how not indistinguishable this is from just any other white man speaking.
Yep.
All right. It's back to the basics here, folks. It's just available on Amazon and Apple TV.
Manzana TV. That was supposed to be Morgan Freeman. The joke was that I was going to do...
You get too scared? It's okay to be scared sometimes.
All right. That'll about do it. Thanks, Jarrod. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you to
Jarrod.
Ian. How do I say it again?
Garev Magut.
Garev Magut.
Mm-hmm.